Welcome to the FTX podcast, Crypto Bahamas edition. I'm very happy to have here with me today Kanav, Kariya, the president of Jump Crypto, and a very, very savvy guy. Welcome.
Thanks, Tristan.
Yeah.
Awesome to be on here, man.
Good to have you. Also a very good friend of mine, so I'm
That's right.
extra happy to have him here.
Yeah.
To get started, Kanav, do you want to jump a little bit into what Jump Crypto is?
Yeah, absolutely. So for folks that aren't familiar with Jump, Jump was founded about 20 years ago in the pits in the CME as a prop trading firm. Today, one of the largest quant trading firms in the world, trading most traditional asset classes. We started in the crypto markets over 6 years ago as an intern project at the University of Illinois. And that effort has kind of grown to be what Jump Crypto is today. So today, Jump Crypto, we have grown to over 150 people, and we define our business over three primary pillars. And so one is prop trading, which is exactly what we do on the other side of the house, which is build trading intelligence and scale it. The second piece is venture, where we've been aggressively deploying over the last 6 years, partnering with some really good institutions and kind of all the way from seed stage to kind of late growth. And the third bucket is building, which is closest to my heart, and one that I hope we'll get to explore a bunch in this conversation, where we've taken on the role as deep core contributors to some of the most exciting protocols out there in space. And those have been Pith protocol, which is an Oracle protocol on Solana, bringing together some of the largest financial institutions contributing their own data directly to chain, and Wormhole, which is an interoperability protocol connecting a lot of exciting heterogeneous blockchain environments. In addition to that, we run validators. We have a big infrastructure business. We have an in-house custody, an audit and security team, and our trading engine that serves as a shared resource across the firm.
Before we go into a lot of these things that you guys are working on, how did Jump move into crypto in such a manner when everyone else was so tentative about it, especially the traditional firms? And how did you become the president of Jump Crypto?
Yeah, the whole crypto situation started at the research lab that we have at UFI. And when I started as an intern there, along with this kind of sandbox trading problem that we were running on crypto markets, we had a VR project working on abstracting trading screens and a mining rig in the closet, and some academic problems working with professors and networking and machine learning. And the lab was meant to be an incubator for the next exciting opportunity. And so Jump, kind of starting from the pits, has seen so much dramatic innovation in financial markets, moving from really an aggressive physical landscape to electronic clicks, to a high-speed wireless towers and hardware development, and then all the way through to having a world-class research and machine learning environment to predict alpha. And so it's always like the firm is geared towards thinking about innovation and thinking about the next thing. And crypto was an exciting new asset class that posed an interesting sandbox trading problem that people could attack. And it was an easy way for the firm to experiment with the new asset class. And I definitely won't claim prescience in that we thought we would end up being deep infrastructure builders in the space and be building, these giant multi-billion-dollar protocols when we started trading. But that ethos of the lab and the innovation has kind of stayed with us. And so as I've had the opportunity to be through this crypto journey over the last 5 years, started as an intern doing engineering work, building our trading platform, and then I came back as a quant. Working on some of the predictive modeling for building alpha on trading engines. And then I had the journey to go through partnering with a lot of the early L1s and DeFi protocols in thinking through in first talking through what trading and liquidity problems we had, but through that exploring that they had all these interesting problems in modeling complex financial environments or resource constrained programming problems. And all those kinds of felt like very familiar to like what a quant firm does today. And we found a way to really apply that to partnering with them more deeply. And I got personally just very excited about that idea. And, that went from having conversations to submitting governance proposals to writing some code to, snowballing into where we are today. And that's how we got here.
Yeah, because you've had a meteoric rise. You were an intern you got associated with this program, you began to help with it, and then you pretty quickly became the president of a program that now has 150 people, which is very impressive. I'd like to hear a little bit about how that's been for you to go through these transitions, and then also how this ethos of building began. Because I know at the beginning you guys were just trading, but then what was the impetus that said, look, we need to actually make amazing infrastructure that builds this ecosystem?
Yeah. One, I feel like incredibly fortunate and lucky to have been in this spot. It's been an amazing journey upwards, and the being able to build in like this really startup-y fun environment with the infrastructure and resources of Jump behind you has been awesome. And what I'll say is, I make a lot of mistakes every day, all the time, and there's a lot of things that I don't know. But the whole environment is full of it's very, very high talent density and really smart people that are highly autonomous and work together to create a lot of value. It's not very bureaucratic, and that makes my job and the firm's job a lot easier. And the switch to trading, the switch to building, it wasn't like there wasn't like a aha click moment where it happened. It was generally very organic, as most of our initiatives at Jump are. And so it started with us like market making and talking to these early protocols about liquidity problems. And then we said, they're building this like complex DeFi that has like all these different liquidity problems that pertain to both off-chain and on-chain markets. And we think that they're missing something, or there's something that we think understand better about this model. And those conversations led to like those projects wanting a little bit more from us, and like, okay, they'll help us roll out this new feature. And then it was like, okay, they're building in this like new resource constrained space, and our engineering talent is like quite applicable here, and maybe we can build alongside them. And as we started partnering with these guys on the liquidity side, it became very clear to us that we need to differentiate, right? Like if we really want to take a position in this space that allows us to grow with it as much as possible over the next 5 to 10 years, we can't be working on commoditized platforms. Rolling out generic market making or just trading on the prop side wasn't going to get us there. And we needed to figure out how we're going to partner and align. And so it ended up being, okay, let's interact with some of the on-chain elements. Let's help them build out pieces of infrastructure. And through that process, we found all these different gaping opportunities that all these protocols were facing every day. And Pith was really a big unlock for us in like, okay, we've looked at all these different opportunities in the space where people need the data. We couldn't find an element via which to distribute that data. And we said, okay, let's bring some people around the table and create a piece of infrastructure. And that was followed by the Certus acquisition, by in-housing the venture function, and really catapulted to like the spot that we're at.
Actually, something I'd like to hear a little bit more about Pith is this development of getting these major firms who have always been so tight-fisted with their data to be willing to share data on-chain with anyone that wanted to query it. How did that process happen? And also, I want to hear a little bit about confidence intervals, because I think they're one of the most important innovations we've seen in oracles in a long time.
Yeah. It's been kind of incredible. I was just on a market making panel here at the FTX Crypto Bahamas, up with folks from Hudson River and Susquehanna and all the firms that always hate each other and never pick up the phone, right? And now everyone's come together and we've built this decentralized piece of infrastructure, and it's like there's still a bit of like sticker shock and a bit of recall even at the firms, being like, why are we sharing all of this stuff with them, or like, why are we working with these guys? And that's generally a new paradigm that Web3 and crypto has unlocked, right? It's allowed us to create programs that are transparently uploaded onto the chains, right? And regardless of who architects them, who builds them, once they're uploaded, everybody can very transparently see what the rules of the game are going to be and export the trust of execution and the trust of the environment to Solana or to the blockchain. And this export of trust has created a positive sum game where only zero sum games had existed before, right? And so that's like been one of the big unlocks for us, even mentally inside of the firm, and just one of the things that excites me most about the space. But I do want to touch on confidence intervals as well. And so it works in a fashion by bringing all of these independent, disparate first-party data sources from across the entire globe to price, independent assets. And an important thing about price is that the price has an uncertainty to it, right? Like, how much are you buying, or where did you buy it, or what do you have access to? We've seen so many fractured liquidity events, and for the crypto folk, this is kind of pretty easy to reason about. Bitcoin on Coinbase sometimes trades a different price to Bitcoin on a Japanese exchange, and there's an arbitrage, and there's always systemic reasons that these things persist. And so when you have this truly first-party data that's coming from all these major financial institutions that cover large percentages of global trading volumes across asset classes, you're able to create a sense for the dispersion of pricing for a different asset class. And in Pyth, this notion is translated into a feature called confidence intervals. And so in addition to an aggregated price, which takes together all these different independent inputs, it combines them to create one price, but then also tells you what the dispersion of those has been, so that the DeFi application or the engine that you're building on top of this pricing can take into account the fact that there is a broader liquidity environment, that it should narrow out its spreads, or that it shouldn't liquidate people, or that it shouldn't provide pricing. And and when you're using like an on-chain Oracle price to determine the point of risk transfer for two different assets, taking a slightly higher dimensional amount of information is really important.
Super important. I think it's one of the most important things in DeFi, because in truth, you, if not, see things like what happened with the make or die situation and other things like that. So I'm very excited for Pyth. But how did Wormhole happen? Like, you had Pyth and you had it on Solana initially. Was Wormhole the thought of how do we get this data to every other chain, or what was the genesis of it?
No, that's exactly right. So Wormhole was initially built as this bi-directional ETH Solana bridge, as a Solana hackathon project that Henrik and the Certus1 team built. And when we were kind of architecting a lot of Pyth stuff along with the Pyth community, we were thinking about how we take this data cross chain and having conversations. And so I called Henrik and I was like, can we generalize Wormhole to also take Pyth data to these different chains? And that led to a whole series of conversations that got us both very excited about the fact that we do need a generalized message bus that connects all these different heterogeneous environments for far more feature-rich use cases than token bridging, right? And so we acquired Certus1 over a year ago now, and we're running all of the validators and a whole bunch of infrastructure. But one of the most exciting things that we've done together is build this new incarnation of Wormhole. So Wormhole V2 was launched last August as this completely generalized message bus that today connects 8 or 9 of the top blockchains and in a quickly expanding set. And the total, like, the richness of the application ecosystem built on this layer has been awesome. So the first application that was built to bootstrap the ecosystem was the Portal token bridge. Portal has over $4 billion of assets flowing through its ecosystem today. It sees hundreds of millions of dollars of volume very regularly, on a daily cadence almost. It's a canonical token bridge in the Solana ecosystem. It's integrated into the FTX exchange. It's the canonical for UST in the Terra ecosystem. It sits behind Terra Bridge Money and many other front ends, and it's allowed for this path-independent movement of assets through the ecosystem. That's been a missing feature. For the more crypto-native audience, we've seen the rise of a lot of these state-sponsored or independent bridges, and they create different representations of ETH or Solana or all these different assets that don't remain fungible across the ecosystem, and that causes fractured liquidity, poor user experiences, and a lot of user problems that Portal has come in and solved. And so alongside Portal, there's been an NFT bridge and a whole host of applications that are embedding interesting payloads and building feature-rich applications on top of the messaging layer and composing with the assets.
So I think when people think of bridging, they usually think of moving tokens from one chain to another. How does it work that you can send a Pyth data message from one chain to another?
Yeah, and that comes back to like the fact that Wormhole is just a generic message bus, right? And a message is a message. A token bridge is a message. An Oracle data message is a message. A governance vote is a message. And so the way that Wormhole works is it's got all these outposts deployed on every chain that it connects to. And any user or any contract on the chain can send any state on the chain to these contracts for it to be attested to. And so it says, I want you to attest to the fact that I have sent tokens to this account, or I want you to attest to this Oracle price or this piece of state on this account. And the Wormhole network of guardians attests that state and makes it available for delivery to any other network. And so Wormhole enables the movement of assets, of NFTs, of Pyth Oracle data, of governance votes across chains, and far more feature-rich things that we'll continue to see develop.
And the decentralized nature of this comes from there being many guardians that all attest individually, or check individually that the attestation is correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah, Wormhole was launched as a decentralized protocol since day one. It has the network of guardians that governs the protocol. Any upgrades to the network or any transfers in the network have to be attested by a supermajority of the guardians that comprise of the network for the action to be considered valid.
That's super cool. What's the current state of Pith? What's the status right now? What are you guys working on there?
Yeah, so Pith has seen a whole bunch of feature development over the last 8 to 10 months. It rolled out onto the Solana mainnet. It's had lots of changes to the aggregation algorithm to improve robustness and reliability. It's had innovations in the confidence interval. It's got a broader set of asset classes. And Pith is about to now go cross-chain using the Wormhole's messaging features. And very excitingly, shortly, I think we should have some updates on the staking and governance. Pith recently released its white paper as well, which outlines the entire system design in detail as a new marketplace to enable latent data to now become monetized and available for DeFi and beyond.
Mm-hmm. So in that sense, data providers can be paid by providing this data in a reliable manner, and they can lose money if they provide bad data, essentially.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, trading firms have always viewed data as a cost center, right? And they sit in this really rich data-rich environment that they have never been able to monetize or never been able to think about. And it's kind of like, Uber making taxi cabs. People make their cars taxi cabs, and it's enabled this kind of latent set of data to now be monetized, aggregated, and made available for DeFi in a reliable fashion.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of the composability of this, is that you actually own that data and then you can have innovation on top of it. Just like you said, if you own a car, it's yours, you can use Uber or Lyft and you can have innovation on top of it.
Right.
I think that's pretty phenomenal. On the Wormhole side, what's the current state of it? What are you guys working on? What are you working towards?
Yeah, so Wormhole is expanded to 9 chains.
Wow.
There are about there's, like I said, 4 billion on the asset bridge. There's lots of stuff, exciting stuff on the NFT side. Most interestingly, there's about 16 or 17 teams building cool apps on this. So when I say cool apps, I mean cross-chain swaps of all different shapes and sizes. I mean cross-chain lending, yield farming, governance, staking. We're seeing cross-chain NFT primitives come out. Whereas this team on Binance Smart Chain called Mobland recently got featured in Bloomberg for various in-game elements that they use cross-chain staking for. And so people can stake NFTs on different chains for different periods of times to create different experiences. And it's a cross-pollination of culture thing. We're seeing wallets, exchanges, infrastructure providers integrate its functionality in different ways. And it's really set up to be the bedrock of how all these heterogeneous but really powerful blockchain environments communicate with each other and compose.
And is the idea there that as new ecosystems or environments emerge that have a lot of users, you can then connect Wormhole to them?
Right. So another exciting kind of development has been this rise of XDApps, which are native cross-chain dApps. And so you've seen the Anchor protocol, which is a very major protocol on Terra, deploy an outpost using the XDApp framework to Avalanche. And so Xanchor is just a light front end that allows this application to be now accessed from a new geography. And so as Wormhole rolls out the new chains, that lays a path out for the entire suite of XDApps that live on Wormhole to roll out the new chains, for a new set of audiences to be attracted, and for a new chain to have a set of new native experiences for its users. And so as new L1s roll out, there will be more connectivity, there'll be more applications and more exciting stuff to compose with on the Wormhole network.
And a question on how XDApps work. So for example, if you have Xanchor, is it that the funds that you're staking or putting into this pool are sent back to the home chain, or is it just an attestation that those funds are there and then the yield is sent from the home chain to the XDApp?
Yeah, so the XDApp framework itself is quite flexible, so you can cut it a few different ways. But the way to kind of like the mental model, and we'll go into Xanchor specifically as well, is you have a set of contracts and some state that lives on one chain. Right. And that comprises of the Anchor set of protocols or a lending protocol or something else. And you want users from another chain to be able to interact with this protocol, but you don't want to replicate all the contracts, all the state, synchronized state, and solve some really complex problems. And so what the XDApp framework lets you do is to just deploy a light set of endpoints that allows users to send messages embedded with or independently of assets back to the home chain so that things can happen. So if a user on Avalanche has USD, they can ping this endpoint. A payload that says somebody wants to deposit USD to Anchor is sent back to the home chain, and the yield can then even be bridged over periodically or just made withdrawable on one shot. And so there's trade-offs to like how you want to construct your designs. But the simplest way to think about it is you just deploy a set of endpoints and that makes it accessible without redeploying everything else.
Right. Yeah, it seems like a very simple, good solution. What about for Jump Crypto in general? What's next? What are the main focuses? Is it to build out these two ecosystems, or are there other things on the roadmap?
Yeah, so we've developed so many great partnerships over the last 4 or 5 years across the ecosystem. We've been working so closely with Solana, with Terra, a number of other ecosystems out there, and we continue to build a lot on those side. So on the venture side, we recently launched this thing called the Pit, and the Pit is an incubator and a hackerspace for teams to just come and hack for the entire year while having access to all kinds of blockchain resources and almost as a co-working space for crypto. And so, we had one with Solana where they had a 3-week boot camp where the developers came in, did education sessions. Tristan, you were there, and, it was a whole lot of fun. Terra is going to be there for this whole month. And so developers are going through all kinds of coding boot camps. They have on-site help. They're going to help form their business ideas, get legal, capital, all kinds of different kind of solutions. And, I don't know what the end state of the Pit ends up being, but I'm just very excited. I was there at the Pit before I came to the Bahamas here, and, the energy is awesome. There's all these young builders who want to do cool stuff. And that's a kind of a big initiative for us on the early side. We have a new custody solution that we're gonna release shortly and make it open source. We're calling that Project Silo internally, and it's a multi-party based custody solution that allows firms like Jump to custody hundreds of millions or billions of dollars of assets in a secure fashion across all these chains to interact with DeFi and do all those kinds of higher order events. Another big area of focus for us is zero knowledge. We've been working a lot on thinking about how to accelerate proofs, understand technologies. And so we recently sponsored the Z Prize, and this is kind of maybe the first time I'm saying this, but we're going to be even participating in the Z Prize ourselves and dedicating some of Jump's hardware resources and engineers to thinking about how we use FPGAs to accelerate zero knowledge provers. And so across the suite, I think we've got some really exciting stuff going on, and I'd encourage every builder and entrepreneur in the space to come reach out.
Wow, how do you keep all this shit in your head, dude? It's phenomenal. Holy shit. Yeah. And my last question for you is a personal question, Kanav, and it's, what's a life lesson or a habit that you've developed that stands out to you that's really improved your life?
Yeah, I read every night before I go to bed, and that's kind of like a cornerstone of how I calm myself down and center myself again. There's been infinite change in my life, and I even failed to recognize periods of my life that are even just months old at points in time, and finding that time kind of just definitely decenters myself, and one that I try to consistently maintain.
Thanks for sharing, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on, man.